Cheese helps clean fat.
Well, good afternoon to you. This Storm Watch is sponsored by Nationwide Insurance. In just a second, I'll have a look at some of the showers and storms across areas of the southern United States. Right now, though, in our tropical update, Dr. Steve Lyons is going to tell us about a tropical depression in the Gulf and a hurricane which is developing in the Atlantic.
Well, thank you, Rich, and welcome to the tropical update. And we do have a tropical depression and a hurricane. You can see on the larger scale here, here's our hurricane out here. This is Hurricane George. Moving toward the west in the central Atlantic. We have a tropical depression in the Gulf of Mexico and not really much else in between other than a lot of shower activity off the east coast. Let's zoom into that tropical depression first. We have a very clear view of it this afternoon because it's sheared the circulation center right in there. You can see it spinning around like a little top there. Hurricane reconnaissance has gone in and found the center, of course, again. The pressure's gone up a little bit. That's consistent with having that thunderstorm activity shifted off to the east of the center. I just found all the ship and buoy observations out here. Really right now the surface winds are very, very weak out there in and around the circulation. Not much more than 20 knots at best, which is 25 miles per hour. So right now it doesn't pose any major threat other than heavy rain if it were to move on the coast with batches of rain like this, and it's moving very, very slowly. But we still have the statistics here for tropical depression 80. Here it is, 26 north, 92.4 west, about 285 miles south of Lake Charles, Louisiana. Winds 35 miles per hour in a very tight circulation near the core. And of course, Lake Charles is right up in this area, just south of the R in the pressure there. It's nearly stationary, but we expect it to continue on a general drift toward the north the next 24 hours or so. We do have tropical storm watches out from Pascagoula, Mississippi, all the way back to Matagorda, Texas, in the anticipation that this may become a tropical storm the next 24 hours and move north and hit the coast there. Right now it's looking good, though. That tropical storm formation is not occurring at this stage of the game. We also have a coastal flood advisory out, a watch from Matagorda down to Rio Grande, Texas as well. Now as we go out away from our tropical depression here, which is really pretty good news now, you need to keep an eye on that in the Gulf of Mexico, but we have good news that it's not developing at this stage and it doesn't pose any major threat for the moment. The Caribbean is relatively quiet, a few thunderstorms down in the southwest and a few high clouds out there. Otherwise, a rather beautiful day all across the islands, and as we go farther out, the Windward Islands out here, it's actually a beautiful day out there until you get a little farther out, and there we have Hurricane George. And we'll get the statistics on it in a second, but I just want to say that it's been showing continuous signs of strengthening. It's been moving toward the west, but it's had a slight northward drift to that westward motion almost since its inception way back off the coast of Africa. See, the banding features are very well defined with the eye center right there, and it's continuing to move off to the west, and we forecast it to do that the next 24 to 36 hours. Here are the current statistics on it: 13.1 north, 46.6 west. That's 960 miles east of the Lesser Antilles, at least at 11 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time, moving west at 21, pressure 978 millibars. And at that motion, and that direction of motion, it should be in the general vicinity of the northern or central Lesser Antilles sometime early Sunday morning. And of course, those of you in the Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, Puerto Rico need to pay very close attention to this as well, because it's forecast to become a Category 4 hurricane just before it reaches the Lesser Antilles. So very, very dangerous storm potential there, and we need to monitor this closely. Stay tuned to the Weather Channel for all the latest updates on that. Behind it, we have another low here just to the south and west of the Cape Verde Islands, moving to the southwest now, following behind the hurricane. Right now, we don't see any major development, but we'll keep an eye on that for you as well. The tropical Pacific has been very, very quiet and continues to be so. We don't expect any development there at all. Well, let's get back to Rich now and see what he's got going on across the country.
All right, Steve, as we look out across the nation, we do have some very hot weather today up across the plains, also a chance of storms in the south. Much more about this and your forecast. That's coming up after this.
Coming up, the Weather Channel experts are watching activity in the Gulf. Stay with us as we bring you the latest developments, plus weather in your area, next on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by Nationwide Insurance.
She came to Nationwide for auto and life insurance. Our homeowners helped him after a fire. They needed help planning for retirement. For these different needs, Nationwide Insurance offers different solutions. Auto, home, life, financial services.
Plan ahead for their day. I can help you out.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Well, thanks so much for joining us for Storm Watch. Coming up in just a minute, I'll have a look at what's going on around the U.S. A little bit of rain down to the coast. For now, though, let's check out our top stories on our tropical update, which are two tropical features, the tropical depression as well as Hurricane George. Tropical depression now still out toward the central Gulf of Mexico. Latest coordinates as of 4 p.m. CDT, centered 285 miles south of Cape Charles. Top sustained winds 35 miles per hour, takes 39 to get a tropical storm. It seems like we've been in limbo here for a few days, or a day and a half, where it hasn't done much. Well, we do see that this is possibly finally going to start picking up some motion off to the northeast. Right now, tropical storm watches still out from Matagorda all the way over toward Pascagoula. Advisories may be shifted around once a definite speed and direction start occurring here, so maybe some changes later tonight. Coastal flood watches out from Matagorda all the way down to Rio Grande River, of course down to the border of Mexico. Satellite photograph showing center circulation right there. That's it. It's a very small system. Closer view of what's going on with the tropical depression. Getting a little bit tough now to discern what's happening. The visible satellite photograph can see that very clearly. We're on the last hour or so of being able to use that, but the center circulation is actually right over in this area here. And it doesn't look like that on this IR picture, but the heaviest showers and thunderstorms are well off to the east. That simply tells us upper air pattern still is not great or not favorable for development. Slowly changing here. That's why Hurricane Center, we think that this still may get its act together a little bit better tomorrow and more of a northeasterly direction start taking place so that this moisture will again head northward. The main deal with this, rain. We've seen lots of rain in Louisiana. More rain appears to be heading up toward Louisiana as well as other areas of the northeastern Gulf Coast. The big story, George. Hurricane George, as of 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight, 825 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. This is a very dangerous hurricane, moving west at 22 miles per hour, maybe a slight notch of north of due west. Hurricane watches have been posted now from Anguilla all the way down to St. Lucia, so all the islands in between are covered by this hurricane watch, as it is forecast to continue on this west or maybe slightly north of west course, taking it somewhere out across these northern islands in the Lesser Antilles. Today, undoubtedly, it is starting to strengthen. Started out as a quite small feature. It is now growing, and a closer view showing what's happening here. CDO expanding out, becoming symmetrical, all signs that this is getting better organized. Off to the west, Guadeloupe right here. Here's Barbados, Dominica, and you can see this system here. It is growing in size. Air Force reconnaissance aircraft, actually a NOAA plane is going to be out there, a research aircraft, should be out there by tomorrow afternoon to see exactly what is going on as this hurricane continues to strengthen. Farther off to the east, that's George there. Off to the east of that, a weak tropical wave. I wanted to bring up one other point. For all interest in the U.S. with George, it is still too early to make the call where exactly it's going to affect the U.S. if it does. Looking back out across the eastern Pacific, not much in the way of tropical activity. Obviously, the top story, we have our depression and Hurricane George. More about that coming up, plus your forecast after this.
Coming up, the Weather Channel experts are watching activity in the Gulf. Stay with us as we bring you the latest developments, plus weather in your area, next on Weather Center.
Dear True Value, after 3 attempts to install a faucet I bought there, your salesman did something kind of amazing. He offered to come and help.
Time for Storm Watch, when we update you on the latest of what's happening in the tropics. We have a hurricane we're watching, a tropical depression. We'll update you on the Pacific and also some strong thunderstorms back home. Let's begin first with Hurricane George, which continues to strengthen and is going to pose a threat to the Lesser Antilles sometime over the weekend. Here are the latest statistics. This is the 8 p.m. advisory, and if you're plotting the storm, there are the coordinates. It's still a fair distance away from the Lesser Antilles, but with this westward movement at 22 miles per hour, this hurricane is moving, and it is moving fast. The maximum sustained winds are up to about 105 miles per hour. Again, a very fast westward movement, maybe just a little north of west, but generally on a northwest track, and the pressure dropping to about 970 millibars. Now, for those of you who may be watching, or if you have interest in the Caribbean, there are hurricane watches from Anguilla down towards St. Lucia that covers much of the Lesser Antilles, primarily the northern islands here. And just to give you an idea, for instance, St. Martin is included in this, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia, Martinique. These are all some of the islands that are included in this hurricane watch. This means that hurricane conditions are expected within the next 36 hours. This is a fairly rapidly moving storm, I should say hurricane. It is a very well-defined hurricane. It is a very strong hurricane and likely will intensify. That's what the Hurricane Center is indicating at this time. There's the eye, very well-defined eye, very circular in its pattern. This indicating that it's very well organized, nice upflow or outflow, I should say. So there really is nothing that is going to inhibit this hurricane from strengthening any further or from continuing on this westerly track. So that's the main concern. Here's the hurricane, and here are some of the islands of the Lesser Antilles. In fact, if we get another perspective here, you'll be able to see a little bit better. Again, here's the hurricane, northern areas of South America, the Lesser Antilles, and back up toward Puerto Rico. And again, it's moving almost due west. So it looks like by late tomorrow and on into Sunday morning, it'll be just east of these islands, given its current path. So folks in this region need to be prepared for some very gusty winds. The winds And the storm surge on the eastern side of the island, that's going to be the big problem with this hurricane. It's moving fast, so the rainfall probably not as much of a concern. Now a little bit closer home to the United States, here's Florida, there's Cuba, here's the Yucatan Peninsula. You might not be able to see Texas over here. The Gulf of Mexico, very unsettled. Probably what catches your eyes, this little blob of convection, that's what's on the east side of our tropical depression. Still a tropical depression. Winds are still only 35 miles per hour. It has been stationary much of the day. Very weak, unorganized system, but that doesn't mean we don't monitor it, because there is the potential by tomorrow evening it may strengthen to a tropical storm. That's why tropical storm watches are posted anywhere from Pascagoula, Mississippi, down toward Matagorda, Texas. South of Matagorda, Texas, down to the mouth of the Rio Grande, that's where coastal flood watches are in effect, as we could see some flooding obviously along the coastal sections. And it's a fairly weak center that we're seeing showing up right about here, just to the east, some convection, some thunderstorms. The main concern right now is the rain that it might be generated by this. We had a lot of rain last weekend. Many of you may remember Francis. Well, we may get some more rains from this, regardless of whether or not it becomes a tropical storm or remains a depression. So we'll continue to monitor it. But again, it looks like it may strengthen to a tropical storm sometime by tomorrow evening. Now we take you back all the way over across the other side of the Atlantic, and this is the African coast, and we have another wave that has worked its way off the African coast, and we'll continue to monitor that for the potential for some development. But that's obviously a good distance off. Good thing about the Pacific, things are quiet here. We are past the peak of any sort of tropical activity in the Pacific. Not that it wouldn't happen, but quieter. And here in the far Pacific, we have what was once a typhoon named Todd, now a tropical storm rapidly weakening, heading toward China, may bring that part of the world a little bit in the way of rainfall. Back home, rainfall and thunderstorms. That's what we're watching across the southeast and the northern Rockies. In fact, some very vigorous thunderstorms here into Montana this evening, some of those with hail and some gusty winds. A lot of the thunderstorm activity we're seeing here will die down later on tonight in Kentucky and Tennessee and around the Gulf Coast. But again, we're monitoring Louisiana for the threat of some additional flooding. We've seen a lot of rain since last week. Not too much right now, just a little bit of rain north of Lake Pontchartrain, but it's going to persist. We could probably see another inch or so before tomorrow. So we'll continue to keep you advised, and we'll have the latest on the tropics coming up at the top of the hour.
Hurricane George spins in the Atlantic. The Weather Center experts are tracking its progress, plus the forecast for your
Endured two landfalling hurricanes this season, Bonnie and Earl. These two hurricanes are examples of an interesting trend that has been observed over the past 4 tropical seasons. Since 1995, nearly all of the Atlantic hurricanes that have made landfall on the U.S. mainland have come ashore along 2 relatively small stretches of coastline, the Florida Panhandle and North Carolina. In 1995, 3 Atlantic hurricanes struck the U.S., all in the Florida Panhandle. Hurricane Allison was first, and then Hurricane Erin hit Florida with a 1-2 punch. Erin first came ashore from the Atlantic near Vero Beach, and then made its second landfall near Pensacola. In October, Hurricane Opal slammed ashore in the Florida Panhandle. The next year, in 1996, the focus shifted to the coast of North Carolina. Hurricanes Bertha and Fran came ashore near Cape Fear, North Carolina. In 1997, only one hurricane affected the U.S. Danny swept across the far western Florida Panhandle in the middle of July. This year, hurricanes have hit both areas. Bonnie came ashore in Cape Fear, North Carolina in late August, and Hurricane Earl hit the Florida Panhandle earlier this month. Since Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida and Louisiana in 1992, the only areas of the U.S. coastline that have had to deal with hurricane conditions are the Florida Panhandle and North Carolina. It is important for coastal residents to remember that hurricanes can strike at any place, and that adequate preparations can make weathering a hurricane much easier. Well, your local forecast is coming up, but first, here's Warren with a look at the nation's forecast.
And we go into a Saturday morning.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Storm Watch, sponsored by Nationwide. Let's go ahead and start things out with your tropical update and Hurricane George, the very latest coordinates here. And there you can see them if you're plotting at home. 735 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles. Sustained winds of 105 miles per hour, moving west at 20. Estimated central pressure at 970 millibars. Hurricane watches have been established here from Anguilla all the way down towards St. Lucia. So again, that's going to include Antigua and Dominica, for instance, all the way back down through Martinique. All these areas under hurricane watch. If you're wondering what that means, it means that hurricane conditions are possible within the next 36 hours. Let's go ahead and take a look at the satellite. And again, we've seen perhaps a little bit of a weakening. I'm not even going to say a trend, because it's not a trend. It's very common to see this kind of flare up and then maybe not look as impressive for a few satellite images. But this is expected to continue to strengthen, actually. There's nothing here that should really inhibit that from happening. There's no shear that it's going to encounter. It's over plenty of warm, open water. And we're going to continue to watch this pretty much still on a westward track, or maybe just slightly north of west. But there you can see some of the eyes starting to try and reappear once again. We do think that this very well could become a Category 3 or a major hurricane, possibly even a Category 4. So this is certainly something that you need, if you are watching from the islands, to keep a very, very close eye out for. As far as the estimated time that this might be affecting the islands, perhaps as early Sunday morning. We'll be watching this. Remember, you don't have to have the eye or the center of circulation to feel the effects of a hurricane. This thing stretches out several hundred miles. So it could affect a very, very large area. And we can expand the picture, and there you can get a better view for the Leeward Islands here, the Lesser Antilles, as this continues to head off to the west. So if you're watching, you have all day Saturday to prepare. We would advise that you do just that, and certainly keep it tuned to the Weather Channel for the very latest on George. As we go into the Gulf of Mexico, we have another tropical entity here. This is a tropical depression. There are the latest coordinates. At this point, we don't think this is really going to strengthen or change much in intensity overnight. It has been nearly stationary, hasn't moved very much. It's been undergoing some shear. Tropical storm watches remain in effect for much of coastal Louisiana, and coastal flood advisories or watches as you go from Matagorda, Texas, down toward the mouth of the Rio Grande. As we look at the satellite picture, the center of circulation is actually just to the south and west of where that big ball of convection is located. So at this point in time, it's not really looking all that impressive on the satellite picture, which I'd like to show you, but it doesn't want to appear right now for me. But you can get a pretty good indication here of the fact that this is probably not going to do much overnight. We will keep an eye on it as we head through Saturday. It's still possible that this could strengthen as we work our way on into the daytime hours on Saturday. So we're going to be watching George at the top of the hour. We will have more information on that. And of course, we're going to keep an eye on what's happening closer to home into the Gulf of Mexico. Lots to watch out for here in the tropics, and we'll be keeping an eye on it for you. Stick around.
As the tropical depression looms in the Gulf, the coast may have to prepare itself for flooding. The latest update on hurricane season 98 is next on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by Nationwide Insurance.
This is Jane.
Hi, I was coming down. I'm in sales.
This is Jane's car.
Traveling sales.
Hence Jane's problem.
Nationwide Insurance.
That's why this is Jane's Insurance Company, the company with round-the-clock claim service.